What is up, 8th grade? Episode 4 of SBAC Prep here with my daughter, Emily. She's showing you this lovely yellow plate. It's got a circle, a triangle, and a square on it. It's so cool. Um, be prepared, boys and girls, to look at some prior knowledge for this next set of questions. And as before, if you do not have the guided notes, just take out a separate sheet of paper, number it, numbers 19 through 26, and write down any meaningful notes that you believe would help you be successful on these questions to gain that extra credit. Say, let's go. Say, let's go.
Let's go.
All right, so let's go and do some work.
Bye. 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 Two people together. And I can It's a king in the basket.
All right, so problem number 19 here. We see we have two triangles. One of them is labeled ABC and the other one is labeled A prime, C prime, and B prime. Now what we should remember from our geometry unit just a couple weeks ago is that this triangle has been transformed by a series of different transformations. So either a rotation, a reflection, or slide translation. So what we need to do is look at each of these three statements and determine whether or not they could be a series of transformations that map that original triangle ABC onto its final place A prime, C prime, and B prime. So the first statement says triangle ABC is reflected across the y-axis, followed by a reflection across the x-axis. So the first thing that we need to visualize, and this is a very important skill here, to be able to visualize what is happening in these transformations. So if I reflect the original triangle across the y-axis, this should be where my new triangle ends up. So here is where my new triangle is once I reflect my triangle across the y-axis. Now if you see visually, if I were to reflect this across the x-axis now, it's not going to match up perfectly to the triangle A prime, C prime, B prime. So this is a false statement. Using similar reasoning here, what I'm going to do is look at the second statement now. So my second statement says triangle ABC is reflected across the x-axis. So here is where my new triangle would be. Let's see. My new triangle is going to be here. Boop. So there is my new triangle reflected across the, whoops, need to move one more unit, sorry. So here is my new unit, or my new triangle here. And now it says followed by a reflection across the y-axis. Now what we can see visually here is that this one is definitely going to work. So this would be a true statement. The last one says reflected across the y-axis, followed by a translation down 6 units down. So let's see if this one works visually. So again, we're going to reflect it across the y-axis. Boom, boom. So there is my new triangle. And if I were to translate this down, it would be somewhere down here, and we see that it does not represent what we're trying to figure out here. So this in particular is one of the types of problems that we are going to need to visualize movement using our knowledge from the geometry unit. So definitely make sure that you're able to map one thing to the other, and this is problem number 19. Problem number 20 here is a more recent revelation, and these are two parallel lines cut by a transversal, and this is the standard type of example that we went over in class. So it says parallel lines A and B are cut by transversal line M as shown in the diagram. The measure of angle 1 is less than the measure of angle 4. For each comparison, select the symbol that best marks the relationship between the first quantity and the second quantity. Now here's the deal. Remember, that the only two relationships that any pair of angles can be in a picture like this is either they are equal to each other or they add to 180. So let's see about the first quantity comparison and the second quantity comparison. So in this first statement, we're looking at angle 1. So there's angle 1 in the upper left-hand corner here, and angle 6. Now what we need to make sure that we understand here is the difference between acute and obtuse angles. Now we know that they are not equal, so it definitely can't be equal to each other, but now we just need to consider which one is bigger than the other. So angle 1 is an obtuse angle, which means it's bigger than 90 degrees, and angle 6 is acute. So that means angle 1 is going to be greater than angle 6. So there's the first comparison done. The second one says measure of angle 3 plus angle 5. So if I look here, angle 3 and angle 5 are these two, so I'm going to mark them in red. So angle 3 and angle 5. So if I add those together, what I know I get is 180 because they are not equal to each other. And the next ones, my next pairs in green here, are going to be angle 7 and angle 8. Again, these angles are not equal to each other, so the only other thing that they can be is equal to 180. So what I can see both of these pairs of angles are equal to 180, and in this case, they are equal to each other. So since they're both equal to 180, these two different quantities are equal to each other. And there is problem number 20 in a very short explanation. Emily, what are you eating out of Olaf's head? What are you eating? My daughter's eating out of Olaf's head. All right, so number 21, the scatter plot shows the relationship between the number of sweatshirts sold and the temperature outside. Now here is where we need to just uncover what we've already done in terms of lines for this problem. So it says the y-intercept of the estimated line of best fit is at 0, b, enter in the approximate value of b, and blah, 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 blah. So all we're looking for is two things. We're looking for the y-intercept and the slope of that line in this graph. So where we see the y-intercept in red here is just about where it touches 250, and here's where they're going to accept a range of answers. So as long as your answer is relatively close to 250, you're going to get this answer correct. So we see that the y-intercept is at about 250. So if you put 250, 249, 250, 248, anywhere that is close to 250, you're going to get relatively close to the correct answer here. The next thing is a little bit more challenging, but not by much. We're trying to figure out the slope of that line. So again, in order to find the slope, what we should remember is that it's rise over run. Oops, run. And we got to pick 2 points. So I'm going to pick 2 points on my actual graph. So in green, I pick these 2 points here. And I'm just going to count my rise over run. And again, we just need an estimate here. So what I can see is that between these 2 points, I'm moving downwards. So my rise value is definitely going to be negative, and I go from 200 to 150, which means I go down 50 points here. Now going in my run direction, I see that I go over 1, 2, 3 units, but just be careful to look at your x-axis here. So I go from 15 to about 30 here, which means that I go about 15 units. So here is where you can simplify your expression and make sure that you put your fraction in simplest form. So what you can see is that I can divide both top and bottom by 5, and this would be negative 10 over 3. So my slope almost is an estimate of negative 10 over 3. So again, this is just an estimate. Just make sure that you're using the skills that we've uncovered in the line unit to make sure that you're as successful as possible. So my daughter left. Here is problem number 21, which is nothing more, nothing less than just finding the y-intercept and slope of a line. Problem number 22, as many words as they put into here, boils down to one very simple type of problem, and you probably guessed it already. This is a Pythagorean theorem problem. So Pythagorean, I spelled that wrong. Pythagorean. So remember, Pythagorean theorem is nothing more than just a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if I want to figure out what that missing value x is, all I got to do is label first. X is my c because that's the hypotenuse, and we know that it's directly across from my 90-degree angle. 28 and 25 are my a and b, and all I got to do now is plug in these values. So I got 28 squared plus 45 squared is equal to x squared. Now dot 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 here, because at this point I believe this is a calculator question, because 28 squared and 45 squared give me a huge number. And again, at the end, once you get that big number, you take the square root to find x, and you write that answer down here. And you can write down the square root number or just an approximation with a decimal here. So whatever decimal that you get, you can definitely put your length in that decimal. So unless it's a perfect square, which I don't know because I haven't used a calculator, just make sure that you put your answer in either one of these forms to get full credit on this question. So Pythagorean theorem could show up in questions that look like this. All right, so for this one, we kind of got to think outside of the box and make sure that we understand what this question is asking us, just like always. So Jamal states that ax plus b is equal to a parentheses x plus c. Given a, b, and c are not equal to 0, what must be the value for c for Jamal's statement to be true? Now, one thing is for sure is that ax plus b, I can't do anything with. So that's something that I need to be comparing to the other side. However, what we should see is that a parentheses x plus c I can do something with. And what you can do is distribute. Now, I know it's kind of weird to distribute an expression that doesn't have any numbers in it, but it works just the same as distribution when we do have numbers. So that a in front gets multiplied by everything inside the parentheses. So what I get once I distribute is I get ax, because a times x is just ax, plus ac. Now these two things need to be equal to each other. So now we just need to start comparing both sides. So ax and ax are both equal to each other. So those two things check out. Now in order for this statement to be true and this equation to be balanced, what I need to see is that b is equal to ac. Now the question's asking me for the value of c here. So if I do a little bit of algebra, just literal math here, if I wanted to get c by itself, all I'd need to do is to get a away by dividing by a. So just like if there was a regular number in front of c and I wanted to get it by itself, I just need to do inverse operations. So dividing by a here cancels out the a's on the right-hand side, and now I'm left with c all by itself, which is exactly what I wanted. On the left-hand side, I've got this handy-dandy fraction, b over a. So I just figured out what c is equal to. So take a look at your answer choices, and what you should see here is that b over a is one of our answers. So, although this problem seems pretty complicated just because there's no numbers here, use your skills for solving equations to make sure that you can work your way through this question as logically as possible. So there is number 23. Number 24 here is a plug and chug problem. So there's nothing crazy about this problem that wouldn't be asked on one of the worksheets that I gave you for volume here. All you need to remember is what the volume equation for a cylinder is. So the volume of a cylinder is given to you as pi r squared times the height. Now they give you both of these pieces of information. They give you the radius and they give you the height. So here is the substitution. So it's 3 squared times 5. And all you have to do now is make sure that you are multiplying correctly and using your calculator. So 3 squared gives me 9. 9 times 5 here gives me 45. And 45 pi is my answer. Now what it says is to round to the nearest hundredth. So what they want you to do is use an actual calculator and multiply that out. So there's going to be that calculator button in the upper left-hand corner. Make sure you use it to your advantage for this particular type of question, because you're going to need to multiply 45 by pi to get your answer to the nearest hundredth here. So this is straight up a calculator plug and chug problem, nothing more, nothing less. Number 25 here is one of those select all the correct responses questions, which means that we could have multiple answers. So in this case, it's asking us to select all the equations that can be represented by a straight line when graphed on the coordinate plane. Now, straight lines have something in common for every single expression. They've got a regular x and a regular y. Now, what I mean by regular is that nothing strange is happening to the x or y in my equation. For instance, in the first choice, I see that x is being divided in the denominator. That's not regular. That's something that's pretty strange that we have not covered this year, so the first option is definitely not here. The next equation has x equals 16 plus 3y. Both x and y are regular here, so this is one of our options. Next one has a y squared. Nope, that is not a regular y, so that's not one of our options. Next one has 8x minus 5y is equal to 30. Both x and y are regular in this case, so that is one of our choices. Next one has y equals negative 6 parentheses x plus 10. Again, I see that x and y are regular, so this is going to be one of our answer choices as well. The last one here says y equals x parentheses 3 minus x plus 1. Here is where they're trying to trick you. Guys, there's two x's here. All you need is one x and one y to get a straight line in any equation, so that is not one of your options. So here is one of the questions in which you need to select all the correct options in order to make sure you get full credit. But even if you were to select one or two, you would get partial credit for this particular type of question just by using the knowledge that a straight line contains a regular x and regular y. Last but certainly not least, here we've got a question at number 26 that requires you to use a graphing tool. Now, we've uncovered a problem before where we needed to make sure that we understood our magic line equation, which is y equals mx plus b. Remember that m is the slope and b is our y-intercept. So if we have an equation like up above where we have y is equal to 2x plus 3, we know that 2 is our slope and 3 is our y-intercept. So if you remember, all I need to do is plot 2 points here. The first point that I plot is my y-intercept. My y-intercept's at 3, so boom, there's my first dot on my graph. 2x is my slope, so 2x is going to be up 1, or up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Now the cool thing about using this computer program to take the test is that it automatically gives you a straight line tool. So once you have your straight line tool, you should get a line that looks somewhat like this. Now what the question is asking you to do is to find the point that is the solution. Now one thing that you need to remember is that the solution is nothing more, nothing less than the point in which these two lines cross. So this point here where they cross is going to be at -4, -5. And that would be your entry for your answer here. So two skills. Number one, graph the line, and number two, figure out where they cross to find the solution. So this is number 26, and we've only got a few more, boys and girls, before I can say that you're adequately prepared for everything that you could see on this test on Tuesday. All right, outro for this video is I just want to say and take the time that you are absolutely awesome and amazing, and that you should definitely not stress out too much about this test. Just show them what you know and you'll do fine. Make sure that you are prepping though, and that you don't walk in just thinking that you're going to do well, because you definitely do got to prep. But hopefully you can watch your way through these videos and it's as painless as possible. So thank you very much, and say goodbye, cool lady. Say peace out.
Peace out.